Okay, we're going to start today on the bottom of Hidalatam base. It's the bottom line of 14b, end of the page. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah today. It's for learning we should have basic midrash immediately. So we're learning for Shleima, for everyone that needs, including my father, Rabbi remember, I had it on my other card. Okay. The Gemara starts like this. Amar Rabba Bar Bechana Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabba Bar Bechana, he makes a statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. You see, this is significant because Rabbi Yochanan is going to reject the statement. So it was said in his name. The statement is, Kol Leisa say Shekad Maaseh like in Allah. There's a rule. The general rule is like this. If someone violates a negative prohibition, so he gets lashes. If that negative prohibition is followed up by a positive command, what to do in the case where you did that negative prohibition? You shall not leave over meat from the Korban Pesach until the morning. And if you do, you should burn it in fire. You have a negative prohibition, you shall not leave over. And if you do, then you burn it in fire. So the rectification of the negative prohibition is not lashes, it's the positive command, what you're supposed to do. It's called the lav shenitik laseh. Then, you see, but you have to look at this carefully. This aseh, this positive command, is only possible after the violation of the negative, which means that this positive command is a rectification of the negative. But let's say there would be, as we're going to see some examples, let's say there would be a positive command that could be done before the negative command. Is that a rectification of the negative? No, you could do that other times also. Not specifically. So what he calls this is Alaysa say shekad muaseh. It's a negative command that's preceded by the positive command. Not that precedes the positive, but preceded by the positive. Means the positive could be done before the negative. So then Rabbi Yochanan says that is not a lav shenetik laseh, and therefore like an lav. It's a regular lav, it's a regular negative prohibition. We're looking here at a contrast between two negative prohibitions that have a positive. One is that the positive comes afterwards and there's no lashes. The other one is where the positive comes before, maybe it's done afterwards also, but it could be done before, and then there will be lashes. That's a regular negative prohibition. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Amrullah, well, he said to Rabbi Yochanan, Amrit, did you actually say that? That there's a contrast between these two types of negative prohibitions that have positives along with them? He says, Amrullah, he says, I never said that. Maybe it doesn't mean I never said that. Maybe it means I don't hold of that. So Amrit, do you hold of that? He says, no, I don't hold of that. Amar Rabba says, Elikim, by God, Amra, he said it. And I have a statement, I have a written text in the Torah. And I have a Mishnah that follows up after that, and which clearly indicates that that's the opinion, not necessarily of Rabbi Yochanan, but that's a clear conclusion that would be a contrast between the two types of negative prohibitions. What does it say in the Torah? Ksiva says, "Vayishalchum in amachane v'gaymer v'leitamas machane." You have to look carefully at this pasuk. Pasuk says, "You should send out of the camp anyone that's impure." And it says, "And you should not contaminate the camp." Okay, so if someone is in the camp and he's tummy, negative prohibition, beeps. So what do? We send him out. There's a positive command to send him out. However, that's not necessarily the full meaning of the positive command. Positive command also means that you should not be in the camp, should not enter the camp if a person is. In other words, the fulfillment of the positive could be fulfilled without violating the negative. You could fulfill the positive by being impure and not going into the camp. That's also being sent out. So here I have a positive command that precedes a negative. Be sent out of the camp if a person's impure, right? Which means not entering. And let's take a look if you get lashes for this, because this would be an indication, this would be a clear case that would tell me if Rabbi Yochanan was correct in that first statement, which was said by Rabbi Bar Bachana. And Tanina, and I have a Mishnah that says, Habal Mikdash Tameh. This Mishnah should be familiar. This is the Mishnah at the beginning of our parak, which says that even though there's kares, but there still is lashes. See, there's lashes by a positive command that precedes a negative command, which clearly says that Rabbi Bar Bachana was correct in making that contrast between alav hanitik laseh, where the positive follows the negative, versus alav shekadmu laseh, where the negative follows the positive. And by that case, negative follows the positive, then there's lashes. So we have a source. What's Rabbi Yochanan concerned about that he changed his mind? There's a very good support. It says, why did Rabbi Yochanan retract from this if we have a pasuk and a Mishnah that supports that statement? Well, Mishum Dekashale, because Rabbi Yochanan had a question. The question is, Einus, case of a rapist. What's the halach of someone that rapes a girl? So the rule is that he has to pay the father, right, a certain amount of money, and he has to marry her and he's never allowed to divorce her. Now, there's different ways of looking at that. He has to remain married to her. But what happens if he does divorce her? Well, he has to take her back. He can never send her away. He has to take her back. So if he violates the layuchal l'shalcha kol yamav, if he violates that you shall not send her away, you shall not divorce her. So then the positive command of to him she should be his wife kicks in, and there's a positive command that he has to take her back. So I have a negative prohibition: don't send her away. Thou shalt not send her away. And then I have the positive that you should take her back. Okay, so that means that the positive follows the negative, but not necessarily, because it could be that the positive is also preceding the negative. Why? Because it says you could fulfill it by not sending her away, by not divorcing it. Because she should be his wife is a mitzvah, even without him divorcing her. That means the positive doesn't need the negative to be fulfilled. He could keep her as a wife and not divorce her, and then he's doing the positive. True, if he divorces her, there's a positive to take her back, but that would be a negative that's followed by a positive. What about a negative that's preceded by a positive, which is this case, because he doesn't have to send her away, and he doesn't have to divorce her at all, and he's fulfilling the mitzvah. Yeah, but here it says you shall not divorce her. So the Tanya was taught in a brisa. This is the question of Rabbi Yochanan. It says, Eines Shagirish. Someone that raped a girl is not allowed to divorce her, but he did. Okay. Im Yisraelhu. I mean, he's not the most respectable community member, but from the first act. But now the second act is a violation. Im Yisraelhu, if he's a regular Jewish person, then Machzer Reina Leika. He takes her back, he marries her back, and he doesn't get Malchus. Im Kayanu, if he's a Kayan, now the rule is that a Kayan cannot marry a divorcee, even if it's his own divorcee. So he divorced her. What does he do now? He can't fulfill the positive command of remarrying her. Yeah. Yeah. He gave her a divorce, sent her out, and then
there was some situations that we learned that like things that were meaningless, like if anything that was against the Torah.
Yeah, if there was a Tanai, he makes a Tanai. He's saying that he makes a Tanai that's against the Torah. Well, here it would work. It would be a prohibition, and he would have to take it back. Yeah, I hear what you're asking.
Right. tea bag in there?
In here. What's wrong? No, I started
Oh, yeah.
mint or peppermint.
Oh, yeah.
Caffeine. You think so?
There's no caffeine.
Oh, yeah, there's caffeine.
I'm holding 2.5 years straight. Okay.
Probably good because
Okay, yeah. Okay, so im kayan who like a machzer. If he's a kayan, he gets malchus, and because he divorced a woman that he wasn't allowed to divorce, and he also cannot fulfill the positive command of marrying her back. He's going to get malchus, because you see, usually if there would be a positive command, then instead of the malchus, you do the positive command, and that's the positive command is the rectification of the negative prohibition. You violated the negative prohibition. So what do? Either he gets the punishment or he rectifies it. Instead of getting the punishment, he rectifies it. So over here, he can't rectify it, so he's going to get the punishment. He's a kayan. He can't marry her back, so he's going to get the malchus. Like Yevena Machzer. Now the Gemara elaborates on this. He says, 1 second. In Yisrael, who Machzer Vena like it. But if he's a Jewish person, then he just marries her back, the rapist. He divorced her. Wasn't allowed to. He just marries her back, and he doesn't get malchus. Why doesn't he get malchus? Because it's a lav shenita class A. It's a positive command that follows a negative, and you don't get malchus if a positive follows. Now the problem is it's not perfectly a positive that follows negative, because it's a positive that precedes the negative also, that he never should have divorced it. That's all. So here I have a case which contradicts the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Amai, why doesn't he get malchus? Let's say you should get malchus according to Rabbi Yochanan. So this is the explanation why Rabbi Yochanan retracted from that original statement, that there's a contrast between these two types of positive commands. Here you see that there's no difference between the two positive commands. Here we see that there's no malchus, even if the positive precedes the negative. Where do you see this? By the rapist that doesn't get malchus by marrying her back, even though that positive command preceded the negative of not sending her away, that he should stay married. What's the positive command? The positive is Elisha. To him, she should be a wife. That's the positive. Okay, Amar Ula comes along Ula and says, you don't need to retract, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, you don't need to retract. We can explain that statement of the Einus a little different, and then you'll be all set with your with the statement that there's a contrast between the two types of positive. Okay, at this point, we're going to have another 7 steps to this Gemara. So far, we had like 3 steps, right? We had the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. We had Rabbi Yochanan denying it. And the explanation why he denies it was because of the case of Einus. Why it's not denying, he retracts. And then because of the case of Einus. Now we have Ula that comes in, and we're going to go back and forth here. And as you go back and forth with what's happening with the Einus, this is going to flip back with, should Rabbi Yochanan be retracting, or should Rabbi, everything, it like reverberates. It's like, as you swing it here, it affects. Is Rabbi Yochanan retracting, or is Rabbi Yochanan not retracting? That's it. All right?
At the beginning it says that he didn't say it. Right? And then now at the end it says that he retracted. And in the commentary here it says that he could have just said, I said it and I take it back. So it's like a lot of different, but it seems like to keep proving that he did retract.
Right.
Some say that he didn't say it.
Right. Now the words of the Gemara is ignoring the actual statement of Rabbi Yochanan, that he says, no, I didn't say it because I retract it. The Gemara is ignoring that. The Gemara is just looking at, should he have or should he not have? Is the logic behind it correct or not? And that's what the Gemara seems to be doing. Well, let's take a look at Ula. Amar Ula, lo yoymar Don't say. Let the Torah not say. Lo yisiya li'isha b'ainas. The words that to him, lo yisiya li'isha, to him she should be a wife. Those words in the pasuk, the Torah shouldn't say by the rapist. And I can understand that from the Mitzvah Shemra. Mitzvah Shemra is another case where a person marries a girl and he claims that she was not faithful in between the betrothal and the marriage.
They bring the sheets or something?
They bring the sheet. That's the case. So it's the words are, he's a Moitzi Shemra. He gives her a bad name. Says that I married your daughter and there was no, she wasn't a virgin. That means she wasn't faithful. So the rule over there is that they find out that he's a liar and he has to stay married to her. Yeah?
Punishment enough.
And he gets Malkus also.
Every day.
And he has to pay, right? He has to pay. He gets a lot Malkus and he has to stay married. Yeah. Okay.
It's the worst.
So the Torah doesn't need to say Elisha by the Einus because it says it already by the Mitzvah Shemra. Doesn't have to say it by the rapist because it says by the person that gives her a bad name. What did the Mitzvah Shemra do? Did he rape her? No. He married her. He just claimed that she wasn't faithful and he's lying. He's giving her a bad name. And the rule is that he has to stay married to her. So Einus, someone that raped her, like Koskin, for sure he should have to keep her and stay married. What he did to her, what the rapist did to her, is much worse than what the Mitzvah Shemra did. And to rectify that is that he can't just drop her, throw her under the bus. He has to take responsibility for the rest of his life. So for sure, the Einus should have to take responsibility. She should stay married to her for the rest of her life. So the Torah doesn't need to say it. So Lama Ne'amar, I'm reading what's in parentheses. So why does the Torah say it? By the Einus. So what Ula is doing here is he's telling me that this positive command of being married to this girl was not necessarily talking about after he divorces her. It was also talking about before he divorces her. So that's why it was a positive that preceded the negative. However, now Ula is coming and saying that I have two. I have one positive that precedes the negative that it says by the Einus, but it doesn't need to say it. It could say it. I could have understood from the Mitzvah Shemra. So why does it come along and say it by the Einus again? It's coming to tell me a specific command that after he divorces her, he has to take her back. So there's two positive commands. One is that he should not divorce. It's not a positive. That's thou shalt not divorce. To him, she should be a wife. That's one. That means that he should remain married. Positive. Then there's another one that kicks in. If he divorces her, it kicks in. To him, she should be a wife, and that I'm learning from the actual statement of Leisieli Isha, but it says by So because I have two, one because it wasn't necessary to say it, I can learn it from somewhere else. That's one. Second one is, but it does say it. So I have two. So one of them is coming to tell me that it's a regular lav shenitik lasei. That's a positive command that follows the negative command. I have two scenarios here. One is fulfilling the positive when he never divorces her. Another one fulfilling the positive after he divorces her. And that's a lav shenitik lasei. And that's why, you see, what comes out now is that's why Mishnah said, the Brisa said, that you don't get Malkus for when he divorces her. If he's a Yisrael, he doesn't get Malkus because he marries her back. The positive rectifies the negative. But according to Rabbi Yochanan in his first statement, the positive that precedes the negative doesn't rectify it. So there should be Malkus. So now we're saying that, but this is not a case of a positive that precedes the negative. This is a case of a positive that follows the negative, because there's two positives here. Which takes me back to Rabbi Yochanan was really correct in his first statement. Because in an actual case where a positive precedes the negative, over there would actually be Malkus.
When they started, it was like the positive before or after the negative.
Right.
This is different.
This is a positive after the negative.
Before and after.
No, I have two positives. One positive before, one positive after.
Yeah.
So the positive that comes after rectifies the negative. So that's why there's no Malkus. But if it would be a case of only one positive beforehand, then there would yes be Malkus. That's Rabbi Bar Bachana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan.
But this one, can they put it also the other way?
But
They, instead of saying that,
he's saying to
Before
look
what
at the
they-
other
okay.
positive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but if once I have a positive that rectifies the negative, then I don't give a Malkus because Malkus is for the negative, but I'm rectifying it with a positive.
so then, okay.
Now, the catch over here where it gets tricky is that what we just did was we made an oinus into a lavanitic lesson. The case of the rapist is a case of a positive that follows the negative, which now answers our question why, and Rabbi Yochanan doesn't need to retract. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan's first statement is now strengthened. Because a positive that doesn't proceed, that a positive that precedes the negative would actually have Malkus. Okay. We're holding by Bakati Eines Mimaitzi Shemra Leigamar. 1 second. The way that you turned the case of the rapist into a lavanitic lessay was only because you were able to say that it doesn't need to say that the mitzvah of Leisi Isha that she should be to him, like with above. To him, she should be the positive command. Doesn't need to say it by the rapist. It could say it just by the Mitzvah Shemra. And then I would automatically know that it would apply to the rapist as well. So why does it say by the rapist? That gives me two. But that's only if I can learn one from the other. Problem is, but I can't. You can't learn the oinus that if the Mitzvah Shemra needs to keep her for a wife, for sure the rapist needs to keep her. You can't say that. Because there's a very strong question. We see that we're very strict with the Mitzvah Shemra. The Mitzvah Shemra gets Malkus and pays money, and he has to stay with her for the rest of his life. How do you know that the Einus has to do the same thing? By the Einus, it doesn't say that he gets Malkus. Einus doesn't get Malkus. Einus pays money, the rapist pays money, and he has to live with her, but he doesn't get Malkus, which is interesting. What? So we have two ways of looking at it. On one hand, we said what he did an action. The other person just spoke. He didn't do an action. And now we're saying, 1 second, but look at the punishment. Punishment of the Mitzvah Shemra is worse than the Einus. So you can't say, I don't need to say a state of punishment by Einus because I would automatically know that Einus is worse than Mitzvah Shemra and the punishment of Mitzvah Shemra would, because it's not true. Because the punishment of Mitzvah Shemra seems to be worse than Einus. So I can't learn one from the other, which takes Einus back to being only a one positive, which is a positive that doesn't follow the negative. It's a positive that precedes the negative. And then I know that there's no Malkus there, which means that Rabbi Yochanan was correct in retracting because it's first okay. Okay, Ella. Rather, we try it again. Now the Gemara says like this: if that's correct, that Mitzvah Shemra is stricter than Einus, than the rapist. I don't know how to catch you up. It's highly complex. Did you look at this?
Just give them the page number.
Oh, okay. So yeah, on 15, we're like going back and forth with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. He said it and then he retracted, and we're looking at was he correct in retracting because of a certain question. We're going back and forth in this question. Is it a real question? Is it not a real question? Can we answer the question? So that's the so if Mitzvah Shemra is stricter than Einus, then what we can say now is that don't say it by the Mitzvah Shemra. Just say it by the Einus, that he has to remain married to her. And if Mitzvah Shemra is stricter than Einus, then for sure, if he has to stay married to her by the Einus, then for sure by the Mitzvah Shemra. So Ella lo yomer lo yisel isha b'Mitzvah Shemra ligum ma'Einus. Ma Einus she'ena leikim mishalem. Take a look. Einus, the rapist, he doesn't get Malkus and pay. He only pays and is married and remains married to her. He doesn't get Malkus. But nevertheless, the Torah says He has to remain married to her. Well, Mitzvah Shemer like Kolshkein, Mitzvah Shemer for sure should have to remain married to her. So Lama Nemar. So why does it have to say it by the Mitzvah Shemer again? If I can already know that from the rapist, I mean in the Mitzvah Shemer Tanei in Lainas. So we'll say like this. I know I don't need it again by the Mitzvah Shemra, but I do need it again by the Einus. And we'll say like this. Imena in the fun of Tanewin Lachra. You see, we'll apply, what we'll do is like this. It's acrobatics here. The pasuk of V'loi Sia Isha, to him, V'loi, to him. To him, she should be a wife. It's not necessary, this is what the Gemara's logic is now. It's not necessary to state it by the Mitzvah Shema, by the one that gives her a bad name that claims that she was, because that's a stricter case than the rapist. And it says it by the rapist, so it doesn't need to say it by the Mitzvah Shema, which, because I would know it automatically if it says it by the rapist, for sure the Mitzvah Shema has to, because the Mitzvah Shema seems to be stricter than the rapist. So why does it have to say it by the Mitzvah Shema? Probably it's coming to teach me something. What's it coming to teach me? Well, I don't need it to say it over there because I would know it. It's coming to teach me back to the rapist. What is it? What's by? Well, by the rapist it says it. So what? It says no. By the rapist it only says it before, when it precedes the divorce. But what about after the divorce? I wanted to state it again. So it's a lavanitic lase. So I have it now. I have a clear prohibition. I don't know how clear this is, but it states it goes from the Einus to the Mitzvah Shemra, from the Mitzvah Shemra back to the Einus, not the one that precedes the divorce, but the one that follows the divorce, that this would be an asay, a positive command that follows the divorce. So, okay, now you know what that means. What this means now is that Einus is a lavanitic lase, which means that by the Einus, which is a regular lavanitic lase, there's no malchus. But by a lav that's preceded by an essay, a negative command that's preceded by a positive, there would be malchus, which means Rabbi Yochanan's first statement is correct. Now the Gemara says, minus nami, 1 second. But you can't learn Einus, you can't learn Mitzvah Shemer from Einus, because I have a strength in Einus that maybe it's specifically by Einus that it says it, and that's why it won't apply to Mitzvah Shemer. What is that strength? I have a strong question. Einus, the rapist, he performed an act which was a criminal act. He raped a girl. The Mitzvah Shemra was getting married to her. Yeah, he created a lawsuit and all of this, but that was just talk. So if it says that he has to remain married to her by the rapist, that doesn't necessarily mean that by the Mitzvah Shemra he has to remain married to her. So now I can't learn one from the other. And now I'm back to saying that there's only one prohibition, there's only one positive by the Einus, and nevertheless there's no malchus, which means Rabbi Yechon was correct in retracting. Okay. Ella but rather, we can do it like this. We can say, it doesn't need to say my Leisia Isha by the Mitzvah Shemra. Shariyishtihi. You see, by the Mitzvah Shemra, he married her. The pasuk says, to him, she should be a wife. That means that he has to go ahead actively and marry her. 1 second, he's married to her. What does it mean he has to actively go ahead? He's already married to her. So that whole statement is not necessary by the Mitzvah Shemra itself. So what we were doing is, before what we're trying to do is, don't say by the Mitzvah Shemra, I'll learn from the Einus. Don't say by the Einus, I'll learn from the Mitzvah Shemra. Now we're saying no. The Mitzvah Shemra itself doesn't need to say it, not because of Einus, because the Mitzvah Shemra is already married to her. So now I have an extra statement by the Mitzvah Shemra. So why does it have to say it there? I mean, in the Mitzvah Shemra, and now I'm going to say, why does it say it by the Mitzvah Shemra? I'll use the imein. If it's not necessary there, I'll apply it to somewhere where it is necessary. And if I don't need it for a positive command that precedes the negative, I'll use it for the positive that follows the negative, which now, where I'm holding right now, is that an Einus is a positive command. It's a lav hanitik lese. It's a negative that's followed by a positive, where the positive rectifies and that's why over there's no malchus. But in another case of a positive that precedes, there will be malchus, which means Rabbi Yechanan's first statement is correct. Rabbi Yechanan should not be retracted. The Gemara says, 1 second. Okay. That asks like an obvious question. I'm sort of ignoring this as we were learning this because I didn't want to mess up the logic here. The Gemara says, what just happened? Why do you need to pull the extra positive? We have an extra positive, right? Because we didn't need to say it by the Mitzvah Shemra, because he's already married her. So the positive command that he should actively marry her is not necessary. So we said, oh, it's not necessary. So now we'll pull it over to the Inus. 1 second. And we are in the Inus, not to the one that precedes, but to the one that follows the divorce. So 1 second. Mitzvah Shemra has to remain married to her also, right? And it doesn't need to say that because he's already married. So why does it say it? We were saying, oh, it's for some other case by a rapist, nothing to do with the Mitzvah Shemra. So 1 second. Mitzvah Shemra has to remain married to her, and he's married to her already now. So why does it say to him she should be a wife that he has to marry? Maybe it's after he divorces her by the Mitzvah Shemra that he has to go ahead and remarry. Why am I saying that he has to actively marry her only by the Inus after he divorces her? The Mitzvah Shemra itself has the same case, where if he divorced her, he has to actively go ahead and remarry her. There's a rectification of the by the Mitzvah Shemra. Like, how did we end up in Yehupitz? When we're right here, we need it for the Mitzvah Shemra case.
I was wondering along the line you just said. In that case, that it says that he was already married. If he divorces her, and now you said that there is a mitzvah to remarry,
right?
But in the case that wasn't there, is there such case where, like, if a person did something not, then no correction?
Yeah, if there's no correction, then it's malchus.
But it's not. It always lands either correction or malchus.
Well, any negative, if there's a negative prohibition in general, there's a negative prohibition, then there's malchus. If there's a rectification to the negative, lavanitic lesse, so then there's no malchus. Now we're looking at a positive command that's hanging around, but not necessarily as the rectification of it, because it could have been performed before preceded the negative. Is that considered a rectification, or is that not? That's what we're playing with. Well, so now I don't have a support. I don't have a reason to say that Inus is any different than I can't say that Inus is a regular labanetic lasse because I don't have an extra assay positive command by Inus because I'm using it for the Mitzvah Shemra. So, but by the Mitzvah Shemra, I'm going to be left with a case of two positive commands. One, because he's already married her and it didn't need to say that he has to remain married to her. The second one is if he divorced her, he has to remarry. So the Gemara says, you're right, Enechanami. So you don't have a limit for by Inus. At this point, we're holding right now where Rabbi Yechanan's retraction is correct. It's good that he retracted because Inus, the case of the rapist, is a case of a positive that precedes the negative, and there's still no malchus. Rabbi Yechanan's first statement was incorrect. But however, but because it says it by the Mitzvah Shemra, two positives, right? One because it wasn't necessary, and one because it said it. So I have two positives by the Mitzvah Shemra. So I'll learn Inus from the Mitzvah Shemra. We said, but I can't learn it directly to the Inus, but I have it from the Mitzvah Shemra. Now from the Mitzvah Shemra, I'll learn it to the Inus. That the same thing was applies. Now the way the Gemara looks like, the Gemara says, but my Gomer Minei, how are you learning this? If you want to use a Kal V'chaimer and say, well, if it says positive command by the Mitzvah Shemra, and for sure it applies to the Inus. We had problems with that. Iba mamatzino. It could maybe you're just going to learn because we have a precedent. Mamatzino means best. Well, you see it like this. I have no reason to say different. So ikal mifrach kedeparchinan malamitzi shemra shekin le'asmais. But 1 second, you already told me that mitzi shemra is different than einus. Mitzi shemra. Maybe I would have thought the Gemara would have said the opposite. I would have thought the Gemara would have said, "Malam mitzi shemra shekain leikel mashalin." That looks like that's how Rashi's learning it. Do you have a different text? I'm wondering if there's some text there that's. Just 1 second. No, don't worry. It adjusts it over here. Okay, whatever the case is, it's not. I'm just looking at the wording. Whatever the case is, we already said that I can't learn one from the other. That's what we just did for the last 4 steps of the Gemara, is that I can't learn one from the other because this one has a stringency that one doesn't have. So now what you're telling me that we're going to learn one from the other, just like after all of this, we're just going to like retract on that. Ela Marava. Okay, so this is just about the conclusion. Doesn't. Okay. This is just about the conclusion of the Gemara. This is the Amar Rava. El Amar Rava. Rather, Rava says, forget everything that we said before. Let's take a look at the case of the Einus again. The Einus, the rapist, it says in the Torah that to him, she should be his wife. He has to keep the girl that he raped as a wife. Rava says that phrase is, it says, La yuchal l'shalcha kol yamav. He's not able to send her away all his days. What we're going to do is we're going to say that all his days is being applied to the positive. And we're going to say that kol yamav b'amad v'hachzer. What we're going to do is we're going to look at this different. We're going to look at this as a positive that follows the negative, because the positive kicks in at every moment. We're going to read it that to him she should be a wife when he sent her away. We're going to look at it that if he sent her away, basically he's adjusting the. We were looking at this as a positive that preceded the negative. Rav is saying no, it's a positive that follows the negative. Let me see if they have they spell this out. All his days, these words just indicate a distinct positive command to remarry the victim. Positive command that is possible only after he violates the prohibition after divorcing her, which thus follows the prohibition and remedies its violation. Number 25. The Torah could have stated simply he cannot divorce her. The addition of the words all his days is therefore understood not as defining the duration of the prohibition, which is unnecessary, as the prohibition would anyways be permanent unless otherwise specified. Rather, the verse means that his divorce of her shall not be for all his days. Rather, if he divorces her, he must remarry her. So all his days is coming to tell me that the rectification he should not divorce her all his days. It's not he should not divorce her all his days. It's that she should be his wife all his days. Now the all his days is coming to say that even if he divorced her, he has to remarry her, which means that it's a negative that's followed by a positive that rectifies it. So all his days is now rectified. Okay. So all of this question, everything that we learned before, was like acrobatics, but really it wasn't necessary, because really this is all a regular lav hanitik lessay, which is not the discussion of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was only a positive command that preceded the negative, but this is a positive that follows the negative. And so therefore, by the Einas, there's no malchus, because there's a positive that follows the negative. But in the case of an Einas that precedes, the case of a say, a positive that precedes the negative, then there will be malchus. And that was Rabbi Yochanan's first statement. And v'chein Ravin, Rabbi Yochanan kol yom amadasa. And Rabbi Yochanan actually said this himself. Ravin says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Amalei Rav Papa Rava. Rav Papa says to Rava, when do you get malchus? By a negative prohibition. It has to be similar to the prohibition of you shall not muzzle an animal while it's threshing. That prohibition doesn't have any positive, whether before it or after it. There's no positive that rectifies it in any way. No positive command there. So Rav Papa is asking Rava that what Rabbi Yochanan said in his first statement, which you're now supporting, is that if it's a positive that precedes the negative, then there is malchus. 1 second, still not perfectly comparable to the prohibition of you shall not muzzle an animal when it's threshing, because over there's no positive at all. And we said there's only malchus if by a prohibition, a negative prohibition that's similar to that prohibition. So you can tell me it's this and that and all these other things, but it's not the original case, because the original case doesn't have any positive. On Malay, so Rava responds to Rav Papa. Rav Papa is a student of Rava. Rava responds to him, Mishum d'ksiv be'rachmana aseh yisera migragara. What? Because there's a positive command that's hanging around it. So therefore, you're going to say that now there's no malchus. That now there's no malchus there. It gets worse. The Torah is strengthening it. So Rav Papa responds, So say the same thing by alabanetik lasei. Just because there's a positive command, now it makes it weaker, and now you don't get malchus now because there's a positive rectification. You get malchus even more, and we know that that's not true. So obviously that logic isn't accurate. Amalei, so Rava responds, Ahulan atuke lavudasa. Says, but that positive is an uprooting of the negative. That's a rectification of the negative. If you do a negative, you rectify it with the positive. This is not a rectification of it, and that's why it doesn't get worse. And there should be malchus. That's Rava's explanation to Rav Papa. There's a contrast between the two types of positive that follows and the positive that precedes.
Would it be that the malchus is a penalty?
Yeah. Yeah, but I have another type of penalty, which is a positive. Right, exactly. So if the Torah doesn't tell me a positive rectification, then I rectify it. I rectify the person by giving him malchus. If the Torah tells me a rectification, then I don't need to rectify the person because we rectify it with the positive. That's the lav hanitik lessay logic. Okay. The next piece of Gemara. It's like a washing machine here. Thrown around all over the place.
The blocks.
Next piece of Gemara is what is that?
That's what we do over here.
If someone violates the negative, but there's a positive that could rectify it. So at what point do we say, that's it, you're not doing the positive, you're getting the lashes? Or do we say that no, that we can't give him lashes because he could always do the positive? He comes to court. What's the case over here? The case that would be a good example. Just 1 second. Okay, our case. Let's use our case. The rapist. He's not allowed to. He's not allowed to divorce the woman. He has to stay married to her. If he divorces her, he violates a negative prohibition. You shall not divorce her. Lo yuchal l'shal. Okay, so he divorced her. 2 witnesses. He gave her a get. He divorces her. Says, "You get out." Prohibition. Comes along the best and says, "Okay, we're going to give him malchus." He says, "No. There's a positive. I can remarry her." Says, "Okay, go ahead, remarry." He says, "No. I'll do that later. Mañana." So at what point do we say that you're not doing the positive and therefore you're getting the lashes?
Would that be similar to like not giving the get? Same thing with what I told about the get.
What happens then?
Would beat him.
Oh, but okay, but 1 second. 1 second. That's 1 second. So how would he in that case, how would he ever say that no, you're not doing the positive, you're getting the lash? What would happen? He would have to take a vow in a way that can never be annulled. Takes a vow in public, that can never be annulled. Say, I'm never going to remarry her. Now the court can't can't get him to remarry, and they say, okay, it's very obvious that you're not to be marrying, and now you're going to get married. So there's a machlekes over here between Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. The Gemara is going to say, but what we just did was we said that by the rapist, he always needs to go back and remarry her. So it's a positive command that's always rectifying the negative. Now the Gemara says like this: Hani chalaman damer bitlei v'lei bitlei. Now the way we just explained it is that Rava says that kol yamav b'amad v'hachseh, that his entire life there's always a positive command that he always needs to go ahead, and which means that we can never give him malchus because that positive command is always intact. When would he actually get malchus? Only if he negates ever fulfilling the positive, which would be by taking a vow that can never be annulled. That's so. According to the opinion that says that's when he would get the lashes. The expression here you have to ignore it because you'll see later what it means. If he negates it or doesn't negate it, but according to the other opinion that says no, we give him malchus right now. He has one shot. He comes up to the Bezdin. Bezdin says, "You divorced your wife. Marry her, or you're getting malchus." He says, "No, I'll do it later." So there's no later. You're getting malchus right now. So then, what do you mean that the Torah says, "Kol yamav v'amad," that the positive is always? He doesn't have a positive his whole life. He has a positive right now in court. Either you say yes or no. You only have one shot. Fulfill it or don't fulfill it. Fulfill it. Don't know malchus. So then, Maya Kalamemer said, "What do you mean that the pasuk is saying Kol yamav v'amad v'hachseh?" So we know we have a machlekes over here, which only one way would fit with our explanation. The Gemara says, "Midiu time el Rabbi Yochanan." Says we only need it to fit with Rabbi Yochanan. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan Tana tani bitlei chayav le bitlei pater. Rabbi Yochanan said this clearly, exactly the way we need it. You only need it to fit with Rabbi Yochanan. That's exactly how Rabbi Yochanan holds. The Tani Tana Kamed Rabbi Yochanan explain that exactly, but you'll see it now as the Gemara spells it out. The Tana taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan, kol mitzvos say sheish b'kamasei, any negative command that has a positive that follows it. So kiyam asei sheba pater. If he fulfills the positive, he's exempt from the lashes. Bitla asei sheba. If he doesn't fulfill it, it doesn't say just doesn't fulfill it. If he negates it, then he's going to be chayiv. Amalei, my comment, Rabbi Yochanan says, what are you saying? Kiyam, if you fulfill it, then you're pater. Loi kiyam, if you don't fulfill it, then chayiv. Bitel, if you negate it, then chayev, then you're chayev. Loi bitl, if you don't negate it, then you're part. Your wording is not precise. To me, the way you need to do it is bitloi v'loi bitl. You have to say it, negate or don't negate, not fulfill. There's no fulfill here because you have to take away the possibility of ever doing it in order to get malchus. No, that's Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. Therefore, if you don't take away that possibility, then the possibility, then the positive command is always there. Rish Lakish says differently. Kimai v'lei kimai. He says no, you only get one shot to fulfill it, and that's the way he learns it, which means that the way Rav explained Kol Yamav B'amad V'achser wouldn't fit according to Rish Lakish. Let's leave it right here. But my kamiflagi.
Whoa.
Okay. Have a great day.
5.